Hi, welcome to Bathtub, where when you hear this sound effect,
Super Smash Brothers Melee!
you see these two bathtubs, you know it's a time for one of our recurring theme shows here at the Bathtub, which is it's Battle of the Bathtubs. Battle of the Bathtubs. We got bathtub in this corner, bathtub in that corner, and they're wrestling a fight, and we're going to see who's going to win it. And this is where we take two completely arbitrary writers, completely no reason whatsoever to put them together, just that I read them recently. And one is Philip K. Dick's Time Out of Joint, and Dimensions of Miracles by Robert Sheckley. These are two kind of science fiction. They weren't paperback originals. This may have been a paperback original. I think this was a hardcover and then published in paperback many years later. And we'll talk about them. And I read them both roughly at the same time. And we have a sort of battle of bathtubs, which is where we set them up against each other and we see who wins the battle. Completely arbitrary, absolute nothing, completely pointless. And that's it. This is the all cotton edition. This is the 100% cotton edition of the bathtub. This is where 100% cotton. Good old, there you go, International Bathing Alliance. Only t-shirt in existence. No one else can have one. And this is cotton. This is pure cotton, straight through the head. All natural mountain water. Cruel light of day. You know the drill. I got to say, the cruel light of day, I look much better. Every occasionally these old videos keep showing up. And sometimes I'll be turning on my TV and they'll show up on the thing. And I've got this red, horrifying, splotchy face, which is partly me. But also, I used to put lighting all over the place because I didn't know how to light this thing, and I must have deliberately set those up so that I look like this. I look like I came from a radiation laboratory. I spent my life in being irradiated. Anyway, I haven't been irradiated. We're just talking about these pointless books, fun books, pointless. The best books are pointless. Let's start with Dimension of Miracles, Robert Sheckley. All the information, as you know, I just tell you as we go along. June 1968, and I believe this was a paperback original. I've had this book, or maybe I've sold it and bought it again over my lifetime many times. I've always had this book around me. Isn't it a cool cover? The old Dell paperbacks, and I forget who this artist is. We say it every once in a while, and I remember it, but I forget off the top of my head. He's very good. He did all these really weird, surrealistic covers. Anyway, this is a novel by Sheckley, and it's come up a lot in conversations. Actually, we heard. This is totally babbling, just my normal babbling. I received a nice little note from one of our bathing buddies who was formerly from Russia. I wish I'd saved his name. I didn't put it down, and he was saying that in Russia, Sheckley was, when he was growing up, was a really famous writer in Russia. I can sort of see it because he's extremely contemptuous of American culture. I guess if you want to be in a country that wants to look better, feel better than America, you'd read Sheckley because he just thinks this country's crazy. And he's one of my favorite writers. I've read him since I was a kid. I've often said this: the novels are not as good as the short stories. But I've been kind of going back and reading whatever novels I haven't read, and there's always something in them that's good. His short stories are brilliant. He's one of my favorite short story writers. The other aside here is several times when I hear from bathing buddies or people on Facebook who intermittently follow this show, several people have said that this is kind of what's his name? Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a ripoff of this book. I don't know if that's true. I can't say. I like the movie. Okay, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but we've done an episode. I'm not a huge what's his face fan. I forget his name now. Douglas Adams. I'm sure he's good, but I just never liked him, or never found him exciting. This is really fun. The first half is terrific. The first half is terrific Sheckley. That's all I can say. And like many Sheckley novels, Status Civilization comes to mind. The first half is just flying, and it's just brilliant, and it's one funny scene after another. And about halfway through it, it's almost like Sheckley's just trying to get his check and turn it in as fast as he can. And I'll say a little bit about it. The opening of the story is about a guy named Carmody, and he's living in New York in the 50s. Both these books are set in America 50s, which neither of the writers like very much. And a guy shows up from the far future, and he says, "You want a sweepstakes? You want our Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes from from interplanetary galactic somewhere, and your name was drawn out of a hat. And he said, you should come with me, and we'll make sure you get home. And, of course, everything everyone tells you in the Sheckley novel is a lie. But they take him to the Intergalactic Central, and they say, well, you're supposed to win a big prize. And then they get there, and they say, actually, we read this wrong. You're going to be exterminated for punishment or something like that. So it's like, it just makes no sense. But he goes to this place that's a far future, and everything's run just as chaotically as it is in modern life. Anyway, one of our other bathing buddies, we've had lots of nice conversations with our bathing buddies lately, reminded me that I do try to read a small passage from everything that we talk about. Just a paragraph or two to give you a sense. It's easy finding a passage from Sheckley. You can almost open it up to any page. But I thought I'd read a little passage just to give you a flavor of this very wacky, hilarious, beautifully written. Sheckley never wrote a bad sentence or paragraph. And this is after he goes to this far future intergalactic space hub, and there's another Carmody. And they meant to give the prize to the other Carmody, who comes from a properly sophisticated world, unlike Earth, which they all sneer at. Earth is just really they consider Earth just a real primitive, caveman-like planet filled with idiots, which is what Sheckley thinks of it as. Anyway, here's a little thing that the other Carmody says to him. He says, Earth, the short alien Carmody mused. I think I remember the name now. There was a recent study of isolated worlds and the peculiarities of their development. Earth was mentioned as a planet covered with an obsessively overproductive species. Object manipulation is their outstanding modality. Their project is an attempt to live in their own ever-accumulating waste products. Just piles of shit. That's what planet Earth is. In short, Earth is a diseased place. I believe it is being phased out of the galactic master plan on the basis of chronic cosmic incompatibility. The place will then be rehabilitated and turned into a refuge for daffodils, as it should. So they've decided they got the wrong Carmody here. There's two Carmodys, and our Carmody ends up getting the prize. But then they asked the supercomputer who selected Carmody for this prize or extermination, and they say to the computer, how did you screw up? And the computer says, again, it's just the same page. He says, I was constructed, the computer said, to extremely close tolerances. I was designed to perform complex and exacting operations, allowing no more than one error per 5 billion transactions. So, asked the clerk. The conclusion is clear, the computer said. I was programmed for error, and I performed as I was programmed. So he's made an error as the 1 in 5 billion error. The one error in 5 billion transactions is the way he was programmed. So he's working perfectly. Perfect logic, perfect sensible world, as our world is for Sheckley. The first half of the book is great. Halfway through it, it sort of loses. He actually does something which I really find annoying. He starts sewing in short stories he's written. One of them is a short story about the same time called, I think it's called Street of Dreams, Feet of Clay, about a man who goes into a city of the future where it's run by the city has a computer intelligence in it. Anyway, the story about the second half of the book falls apart, but in the first half he meets God, several versions of God. He meets a planet creator. It's one hilarious scene after another. I always recommend Robert Sheckley. Anybody with half a brain is going to enjoy Robert Sheckley. Time Out of Joint, Philip K. Dick. I remember liking this. I read it once before, many years ago. It's published 1959, was I believe a hardcover. Again, don't trust the Masturbator for data. 1959, I think this is the Belmont, cool Belmont, kind of cool in a trashy way, paperback version. I don't know what the date of this is. It's not 1959. But anyway, this is the paperback version. And like many Philip K. Dick books, this is probably the first of the great Philip K. Dick novels. I think most people tend to agree, I believe. A lot of the earlier books, Solar Lottery and The World Jones Made, they're all kind of fun. Vulcan's Hammer, they're kind of interesting books and kind of enjoyable in a way. But his short stories were always quite lively. He's very similar to Sheckley in that way, is that They're both much better short story writers than novelists. And I think this is the first of the ones that's considered one of his better books. He's sort of writing these kind of non-SF novels, which is about basically middle of the road world, people working terrible jobs, living in the suburbs, wanting to live a little better lives than they do, and kind of sitting around getting drunk and hanging out and trying to pick up girls. They're interesting books. They're kind of fun, but then he starts to put them in a world which is unreal. As unreal as 1950s America must have looked to many people, 1960s America, where everything's kind of ticky-tacky and kind of manufactured and Sheckley-esque. And anyway, this is about guys in a suburb who start to realize that things aren't working the way they should be working. It's very similar to his non-science fiction books for the first 40 or 50 pages. And then they start to realize that there's things happening in this suburb. They start hearing voices from ships, from planes going by, and they start to find things in the ruins outside of town. And sometimes there'll be like places that'll be names of the places, like the gas station where there used to be a gas station, or there'll be something like that. There are all these names out there, and there's all sorts of weird things happening. When the central character, I think his name's Regal Gum. These characters have weird names. Regal Gum. He starts to recognize something's weird. The characters start to recognize this is unrealistic, unreal world in a way, as we all feel sometimes. And Regal Gum makes his living by doing a daily newspaper quiz. It's like a puzzle. It's a logic puzzle. It's not really quite clear what goes on, but he has to send in an answer to this puzzle every day. And he seems to be the greatest puzzle solver in this city. And as you find out later what's going on. Anyway, there's a kind of a manipulated reality, as often in Philip K. Dick. In this case, the manipulated reality is sort of explained near the end of the book. Sometimes you never know where the reality is in a Philip K. Dick book. And when Regal Gum tries to leave town, things happen to send him back into town. I can't remember. There's a lot of sort of modern versions kind of ripping off Philip K. Dick, or Philip K. Dick novels that have been made into movies, as you know. Anyway, I'll just read a little passage. He doesn't excerpt as well as Sheckley, but I thought he'd just give you I found a little passage that might just give you an idea what his characters go through all the time. And I do try to read a passage every time. So thank you, Excelsior, our buddy Excelsior. He comes home and he's trying to figure out what's going on. He just feels like there's something unreal about his home. And he says, and what should we do now, he asked himself. Conduct more psychological experiments on ourselves. No, one told him enough. The one he had conducted involuntarily in his bathroom, when he was realizing this bathroom wasn't his bathroom. The light wasn't in the right place. Even this last one had done more harm than good, had introduced confusion rather than verification. So when you examine this world and try to find out what's really going on, it just confuses you. Maybe just ignore it. Don't confuse me anymore, he thought. I'm bewildered enough now to last me the rest of my life. What do I know for sure? Maybe Regal is right. We ought to pull out the big philosophy books and start boning up on Bishop Berkeley and whoever the rest of them are. He did not remember any philosophy well enough even to know the names. This is a brother-in-law, I believe, of Regal, who works in a supermarket. They all work in crummy jobs. So he's basically saying we should read philosophy about what is reality, Bishop Berkeley and Berkeley's Enlightenment ideas about try to examine what is real, what isn't real. Anyway, it's a very good book. I enjoyed it. It's too long for me. I feel that way about many of the Philip K. Dick books. And about 2/3 of the way through, it's not as satisfying as some of the crazier Phil Dick books, but I enjoyed most of it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Okay, here's where we get the big battle of the bathtubs. Which is the best of these two books? Which one wins in the battle of the bathtubs? Totally arbitrary, means absolutely nothing to nobody, not even to me. Is it Sheckley? Is it Dick? And I think both of the books have problems. This has more problems than the Philip K. Dick books in many ways. The second half just completely falls apart. But I'm going to go with Robert Sheckley's Dimension of Miracles just because it makes me laugh out loud. The first half of it is just brilliant. And if he had just sat down to write a novel, he sort of patches together some short stories near the end that don't fit. But the first half is as good as anything Sheckley has written, much like the first half of The Status Civilization. Sheckley, we love you. That's the Battle of the Bathtubs. And that's the all cotton edition. Except no substitutes. Stay safe, and I'm going to see if I turn this off.